The global synthetic dataset focuses on human trafficking. It does not contain any identifiable information about the victims, even though it originates from over 206,000 actual cases reported from 2002 to 2022. The variables that we use are the gender, age of the victim, the type of the recruiter relationship with the victim, and the type of trafficking. The categories for each of the variables are shown in the following picture. A cleaning step was required, since there were cells in the data without information. We performed two methods. The blank spaces or missing values in the hBroad column were removed and the NAs in the other columns were changed to the number 0. The chi-square test is used as a statistical method to determine if there is a significant association between categorical variables. The chi-square test for independence is used in the following study, since we are analyzing the independence of two categorical variables.
The permutation test is a method that involves randomly shuffling the labels of a dataset in multiple locations and recalculating the test statistic for each permutation. The statistical power refers to the probability that the statistical test will correctly reject the null hypothesis when the alternative hypothesis is true. This test is important since there is a lower chance of committing a type 2 error, which means failing to reject the null hypothesis. Assumption checks. The assumptions for the chi-square test were met since a contingency table was created with the frequencies of the variables type of relationship and type of trafficking. The permutation test does not rely on a distributional assumption about the data, but the variables should be independent of each other. This means that one variable does not influence the other. Hypothesis testing and general methods. We created a contingency table that contains the frequency of the two variables tested for each hypothesis. For all the variables in the hypothesis, we had the data in a one hot encoding format as shown. So we consider better to merge the different variables into a single column.
The first hypothesis tested in this project is the age of the victim is affected by the relationship with the perpetrator. The variables used in this case were age and recruiter relation. The results of the chi-square test and permutation test showed that there was no significant relationship between the age of the victim and the relationship with the perpetrator. After the creation of a subset that excludes the ages between 30 and 38 and ages above 48, the results were consistent with the hypothesis testing on the subsets of the data. The second hypothesis is the type of relationship between the recruiter and the victim does not affect the gender of the victim. The variables used in this case were gender and recruiter relation. Once again, the results show no significant relationship between the type of recruiter and the gender. In this case, we excluded the male gender, and the results were consistent.
The third hypothesis is the age of the victim does not affect the type of trafficking. The variables used in this case were age and type of trafficking. The results show no significant relationship between the age of the victim and the type of trafficking. And for the subset of the data, we excluded again ages between 30 and 38 and ages above 48, obtaining the same results. Lastly, the fourth hypothesis is the gender of the victim does affect the type of trafficking. The variables used in this case were gender and type of trafficking. As shown in the results, there were no relationship between the gender and the type of trafficking, and once again we excluded the male gender to obtain a subset of the data. With this subset, we obtained the same result as with the complete set.